That's the wrong one. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Alright, so today I've been working on these core systems which are going to drive hopefully all my games moving forward. Alright, so I'm just going to give you an overview of what I'm doing first so you understand what the heck this is and why I would recommend it, but not if you're a beginner, because you kind of need to figure out, everyone's got their own way of working as well, but once you've made, like, if you've been doing this as long as I have, you've made as much stuff as I have. Good morning Alexandria, how are you? When you've made as much stuff as I have, you suddenly start to notice patterns and you're like, okay, well, I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again in every single game, and then you always like, and then that gets boring. It feels like tedious and a grind and work, and you get better at it, but then you also don't want to do it for the 56th time, so you sort of, you end up saying, okay, that'll do, because I want to get to the fun stuff. I want to, I don't know, make the new game I've not made before, do all the new exciting stuff that you've never done before. So what this basically is a bunch of these core systems, which is why I'm calling them core systems, that will handle all of this stuff that I do for every single game, but I'm going to make the best versions of them that I possibly can. Bored out of my mind, I do nothing for 16 hours straight. It's crazy. Oh my god, that sounds awful. Alright, well, let's get into this then. I can't promise it'll be entertaining, but it is going to be massively useful. Now, the downside of doing something like this, which I was worried about, I was thinking about this last night, I was like, the problem is, no matter how much you try to cover every facet of a core system, once you take that core system and sort of branch that off into a new game, so let's say I make my first game with all these core systems, I guarantee there's going to be stuff that I've missed. And then the problem is when you start changing things in the core system, it's like, but now my core system template that's in another project, that needs to be updated as well. And that can be a pain. So the important thing is, one of the things I realized is by building these core systems, it needs to be so separate from everything else that when I take the core system, copy it into a new game, and if I start making changes to the core system, it should be easy to just copy the core system and leave the rest of the game behind, and then go and update the core system template, right? And the way I've set this up, actually, this should work. So all I've done, it's as simple, basically, as just putting it in a separate folder, to be honest, and just making sure that making sure that other scripts don't mix in with it, you know what I mean? They need to sort of like, they can read from it and speak to it, because obviously that's the whole point of the thing. But if they're in their own separate area, their own separate code, their own separate folders and stuff like that, and everything's organized, then that shouldn't be too much of an issue. If I decide, I need to change the way my log system works, or the way my UI system works, or whatever, which I'm sure I will when I start making games with these things, because I'm bound to have missed stuff, then you don't have to be like, but now the template doesn't have this, and then when I go back and make my next game, I'm going to have to add it in again, and then again, and then again. No, it's fine. Just make sure the core system is separate, and then you can just copy the core system and then go and update the core system template, and everything should, in theory, be fine. So anyway, now that that's out of the way, and I've explained what I'm doing and what the point of it all is, and my concerns and everything, one of the things I've wanted to do is a button remapping feature. So at the moment I use, so hang on, let me just get into control. So I did try using this very popular tool called what's it called, Rewired, which a lot of professionals will use, and I managed to get a copy of it, but it doesn't work. I don't know, it doesn't work with the newest Unity, so you know what, I'm like, let's just build our own. I actually do like input systems, so if we go to Unity Engine input system, the new input system is really good, but it doesn't support, well, it does support remapping, but you've got to make it yourself. So that's what we're going to do, we're going to make it ourselves. Okay, so what I've done is I've just made a class called CTRL, which is short for control. I wouldn't normally call these things so small, but I don't know, as I've been building these core systems, for whatever reason, I've just kept the names as short as possible. I don't know why. I just wanted to do that. So we've got log query, message, message system, PCP, which stands for play, compile, protect, which is my anti-cheat. SYS, which is basically a system manager. All system manager really does is it connects you to all of these sub-services. So if I want to speak to one of these sub-services, it's something I've wanted for ages. Because I always end up referencing 1,000 different systems in a game, and every single script needs to reference the same one system, and it's like, well, that gets kind of annoying when you've got 20 systems and you always forget something and then it can't find it, and then you're like, ah. So I'm like, what if I just had one core system sort of address book that had all these subsystems, and then I just said, hey, core system, give me log. Hey, core system, give me control. Hey, core system, give me this. And it does. It just works. And I'm like, oh, yes, this is going to be so nice. So that's what those things do. So I've called it CTRL for controls, basically, short for controls. So the first thing we want to do is reference, and at the moment I'm doing this, I think, in system or something, but I'm going to move it now into the control system because it's control related. So all we need to do is reference an input action asset, which I always call input as because I think it's funny, which is just my abbreviation for input action asset. So we'll reference that in the script, and I always have one input action asset because that's all you need really. And at the moment, like I say, it's referenced in my core, I think. It is. So we're going to take it out of in my system manager that I was just talking about. So what we can do now is, instead of referencing the input action asset directly in the system manager, we will instead reference our new shiny control subsystem. Right, I have a way of doing this. Yeah, that one's got capitals in it though, hasn't it? Actually, new Unity will let you use the same case context for both class and object name, but that makes me nervous for some reason. How did we do it with log then? Oh, I see what we did. We gave log a capital L so that we can use the lowercase when we speak to it. So like, I really am thinking as hard about this as possible. So what does that mean? It basically means you reference the object name and not the class name. So because I want to be as fast as possible, I just want to say sys.log in lowercase, because every time, that's not the right sys, but it would be if it was in a different script. Because even like pressing caps lock on and off, that's like 2 extra key presses every single time you want a subsystem. So it's like, okay, let's leave it all in lowercase, and then it's like a URL or whatever, and it's going to be so much quicker to type, quicker to get to. So let's stick to that convention because there's a reason for that convention. So the script name is fine to have the small letter, but we need to give the class name a capital letter. And the reason I want to do that is so that when I reference the class, which is a capital letter, we can give it the lowercase reference. And that way, when I want to call control, I literally just put sys.ctrl, and that's it. I'm in control just like that. So that's nice. Okay, so there's our control reference. We took the input action asset out, and in our control, we just need to add a control class now to our core systems. Ah, that's another system. We don't want that. Control class. Okay, there's my control class. Let's try and put these in some logical order. It wants to be above the system manager. I don't know, should the system manager... Yeah, well, I don't really need to mess with that. The other thing is, there's like some things need setting in Inspector and then some things don't. And I'm trying to organize things in that way. Anyway, we only have one control system, which is itself. That's a good point, actually. Oh, but it does need to be public. Yeah, because if we don't make it public, then the other systems can't get to it, basically. So this is a little bit annoying because we are repeating ourselves here. But instead of repeating ourselves in 20, 30, 40 scripts, we repeat ourselves once, and then every other script knows where it is. So I can live with that. All right, so in our control system, what else do we need? So we've got our input action reference. So the first thing that I need to do... Okay, if we go into our input action asset, we don't actually have a control. Oh, yes, we do. God, I'm so stupid. Right, so there's our input action and map there. So we can set our input action map in our new control script. And if we double click on that, it takes us into Unity Input Systems input system. So I have these like basic nav functions, right? And I made this amazing little nav breadcrumb system. So what I've done is I've called this UI nav. This will not be mappable by the player because like there's no reason for them to change it. So we have basic up, down, left, right, which is for like navigating menus. Confirm and cancel, which is like confirm an option, cancel an option, obvious. And then nav left and nav right. At the moment, I think I only have the keyboard bindings for these. Yeah, I do. Let's put in the controller bindings. Why not? Let's put in the controller bindings before I forget. So we can add a binding on the gamepad just so you can see how this works. And then what do you want for up? Well, I'll use up on the D-pad. So I press up on the D-pad. Okay, that's in there. And then what do you want for down? I'll have down on the D-pad. Wait, I wasn't listening. Down on the D-pad for down. Makes sense. And then I think you can guess where we're going with the rest of them. Okay, so right's right, pretty straightforward. Left is left. Ooh, hang on. And these have keyboard versions as well, obviously. And then this gives the player the ability to decide whether they want to use mouse or keyboard. So confirm in Western games is X, is cross, south button it's called in Unity. It tends to be the other one in the other way around in Asian games, but we're not an Asian developer, so we're going to go with the Western scheme. So which is typically east or circle on the PlayStation for cancel. Yeah, that one's cancel, that one's confirm usually. It's the other way around in Asian games for whatever reason. It's just there. But like I say, I'm not an Asian developer, so we'll go with the Western version. And even like new Hoyo games will give us the Western equivalent because I think they've learned. Because everyone mourned when Genshin came out and said, "Oh, circle, yeah, circle." I'm like, oh, whatever. I just got used to it. But yeah, I was also saying, "Oh, circle," when I first saw it as well. But then I remembered it was like, yeah, this is what Asians systems are just like. I don't know. It's just the conventions they used. All right, so I set L1 and R1, left shoulder and right shoulder, to nav left and nav right. Just so you know what that is. What it's basically doing is, I got the idea from Cat Fantasy. Cat Fantasy has a really, really good system where it remembers exactly where you came from, even if it's loading in and out of instances. And then when you finish with the instance, so let's say you go and farm whatever, red balls for your red cat girl. When you click back, in most games, it will take you to the page before the red ball farming page. Cat Fantasy doesn't. Cat Fantasy remembers where you've been and takes you back from where you came from, and that itched my brain. I was like, "Ooh, I like this. I want this in my games." So I've gone a little bit further, and what I do is I show two chains. Well, we normally only need to show one. So basically, the way it works is, let's say you go to farm red cat balls by going from the character screen, and you say, "Hey, I need these essential materials for my cat girl. Where do I get these red balls?" So you give the player a link and you send them to the correct dungeon for farming. This will show two chains. So it's got a system chain, which is basically the structure that the system has. So battle, first floor, tower defense, whatever it is, wherever you get the balls from. And then it has a player memory chain. And if ever those two things diverge and you break the chain, so I'm calling this breaking the chain, by the way, I'm coming up with my own terminology. So what I said is, if you break the expected system hierarchy chain, in other words, you might have come from where we wouldn't expect you to come from, then we show you a second chain where we can say, okay, you can go back either the system way, and then this teaches the player where to go. I think this is such a good idea because then at one glance the player can see, oh, I see, that's part of battle, dungeon, whatever, like, you know, extreme cat battle or whatever you've called it, right? And then that'll sort of register in the back of their minds, and they'll be like, oh, so that's where this is. And I think that's good because you're sort of teaching the player how to get there normally, right? But if they just want to go back, well, then they'll have a new player chain, and they can say, oh yeah, character ascension, that's where I was, boom, and then they can just click back there. So I'm giving the player more and more options. So nav left and nav right just basically allows them to shift up and down along these nav chains, basically. It was so funny. I was so bored. I went down a rabbit hole. Well, you back. I hope you're back out. You're not messaging me from in that little hole, are you? And it was all red-pilled people crying about China banning big boobs and sexy girls in their game. It probably wasn't China. It might have been, but I'd be surprised. Because I don't think they care. I don't think they give a shit. If anything, it's the West that's like cries about boobs and wants to be all politically correct and feminist and stuff. From my experience, so I doubt it's China. But sometimes it's well known. This is why. Well, I think we've mentioned this before, haven't we? This is why Genshin got censored, because it's common practice for Chinese businesses to basically drum up controversy as a way of trying to hurt the other's profits. So they'll pay for all these bots or whatever, and farm fake outrage on Chinese social media about something that nobody's really outraged about, just so the company has to respond. And apparently that's why Amber got censored. Nobody actually really cared about Amber being censored, but Hoyo had to be seen to do something, otherwise, it looks like they're ignoring the voices of the whatever discontent. I was, look, oh sweet summer children, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're schooling them. School them good. Okay, so these are the controls that are never going to change. We're gonna make sure that our systems just load this map whenever we're in a nav. We basically switch to this map, which is UI nav. And then what I've done is I called this game, but what I think I'll do, because this needs to be completely dynamic, because I have no idea what future games I'll make with this. I could be making driving games, I could be making shooting games, I could be making clicker games, who knows. It needs to sort of serve every possible future game. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make 2 more action maps. One's called Context 1, one's called Context 2. And I'm just going to put some example controls in so we can test it and build it and make sure it's working. But then when I actually go and make a game, this one might be, I don't know, like when you're in a game and it's like GTA is a good example, right? When you're walking on foot, they'll be using one action map because the controls do one thing, and then when you get in a car, the context will change to driving. And then in our button remapping in the UI, we want to be able to show that this is walking and this is driving. And so when we list all the controls, the player can see, oh yeah, I want to do, this for driving or whatever. So that's why we're doing a second context. So I've got a new action here. So yeah, driving is a good example actually. So as our example, okay, I'll tell you what else I'm doing. Another thing, now I don't know if I need to do this, but I think it's a good idea. The problem with just letting all controls be mapped is you might have some controls, like who knows, maybe even debug controls. Sometimes when you're developing, you might be like, okay, I'm not using R3 for anything. I'm going to make it so that R3, I don't know, displays the frame rate or whatever you want, but you don't want that to go out in the final build. But you might leave it behind in the control map or whatever, or forget to disable it or whatever. So I think what I've decided is I'm going to use a prefix of PC for play customizable, and then I'm going to put the name of the action. So we're going to make our system so that if the name starts with PC, then it means it's play customizable. But if I had a control for debugging, let's say show FPS, and I set that to R3 for example, or I don't want that to show up in the player's customizable controls, so we'll look at the name, see that it doesn't start with PC, and we'll just ignore it and we won't show it to the player, so it'll stay hidden. So I think that's a good idea, because then we can sort of separate play customizable controls to controls. Or we might have a button that we do not want the player to change this button. Like it's really important the triangle does something in this context and they don't get to change that one for whatever reason. Then we just stick that control as whatever it is and don't put the PC prefix in it. Then they won't be able to remap it. So that's what I'm doing. So, all right, where do we go from here? I wish I knew. I'm brand new to this. So we could do, like, just for a different context, we could do PC steer left as an example control, and PC steer right, so that we can see that that might be driving context and this might be walking context. And just want to make sure that our system can handle multiple contexts, basically multiple maps. All right, so what do we do next? God knows. Let's have a look. Let's find out, shall we? So we've got our control in DB. No, it's not in DB, it's in core. We've got our control in core. It's got our input action asset map. And now we need to get it into the script. Yeah, it was Capcom censoring, not China. Oh, yeah, I saw something about that. I didn't watch it, though. I've been busy. Total blind, ignorant reaction from people with zero thought in their heads. It's Genshin Impact's birthday today. Paimon's 4 years old and she's still wearing the same onesie. That's disgusting. Yeah. So I've been in, got my rewards. Apparently they've been mass banning people. If anyone who's been using like mods or done anything to the game, they've just let them get away with it for a while. And now suddenly apparently they've just done a lot of mass bannings. And I thought that was interesting because they've done it. They're banned for like 2 weeks. So anyone who's ever done any mods or auto clickers or anything that they're not supposed to have been using, they've waited until the anniversary to ban them for 2 weeks, meaning they won't get the anniversary rewards. Twitter's gonna be on fire. So all those people who've been using nude Ayaka mods or whatever, right? They're not going to get any anniversary rewards now. I saw they just made a new mod on YouTube thumbnail like hours ago. That's too funny. Yeah, I thought that was so funny because I was thinking, oh wait, I bet they've done that on purpose. I'm like, so they've gotten banned just before the anniversary. That's when you have to log in to get the rewards, basically. So they basically won't get their anniversary rewards. I thought that's definitely intentional. Ooh, there's gonna be some angry people out there. Well, either don't do it or don't get caught. That would be my advice. Alright, so input action asset, input as, so we have our map, our action asset linked there. So what do we need to do next? Well, I think for testing, let's make sure we can pull these controls, these action names out of those maps and list them in a list. I think that would be a good idea, just so we can see how we do that. It's always good to start in the bare bones. So for lists, we need system collections generic. Beautiful. We can do a void awake. Okay, and then we want to basically look for any. Let me think about this, because we have different maps, don't we? Let me think about this. How do we separate the maps? That's a good question, actually. Because obviously what we could do is we could just go and list all the controls. Well, let's start by just doing that. But I do need to separate them out. And again, I have no idea how many contexts the game's going to have. I think what we need to do is have the contexts have their own separate lists. For each context, we create a context list, and then we can have a list of those contexts. So CTRL con could be a control context class. Okay, I think that's what I need to do. Can't think of any other way to separate them out. So what I need now is a control context class. So I'm going to call it CTRL con. So what the hell is a control context class, I hear you ask? Imagine if you made a mod tutorial for Genshin now. I know. So I'll tell you what, I was tempted at one point though. Somebody just uploaded this like 10-second clip on YouTube. I don't know what the hell it was. They'd replaced, basically this mod had replaced Nilu. She was completely naked and she just can't. I don't know. She just kind of like woohoo, did this little dance and stuff. And so all I saw was this clip of people playing Genshin, and all of a sudden Nilu just kind of runs in completely naked, and like splashes water everywhere, giggling, and I'm like, no, don't, no, you don't need that. You do not need that. You're not getting that. No, don't do it. But I was like, oh my god, that is the most I've ever been tempted. You know how I feel about Nilu. Right. So let's see. So we first of all, it's going to need a name, right? So we can call it context name. Okay. And it's probably going to need an action map. So it's a public. So we need to be using Unity Engine inputs system, because it is basically an action map. Actually, that should be first, I think. So we link the action map. Input action map, I think it is. Input action map. There it is. Action map. Context name, which we basically get from action map. Do we really need to store that separately? We can probably pull it from action map, I would think. To be honest, that's all we really need. No, hang on a minute. And then a list of inputs associated with that map. That's the main thing that I need. So we need system generic collections generic again. Yeah, that's what I need to do. I basically need to have, for each map needs to have its own list basically. Otherwise, we have no way of knowing which control belongs to which map. I suppose there probably is some if logic we could put in there, but it's probably going to be neater if we just separate them at the root level. So we want a list of input actions, action list. Yeah, that makes sense. And we want to instantiate that, construct it, whatever it's called. Constructor, isn't it? It's the official terminology. Yeah, that's a constructor class. Okay, so let it update. Now we've got a control context class. So if we go back to our control class, what we really want is a list of control contexts. So okay, we can do that now. So from our input action assets, we need a public list of control contexts, which we'll just call control contexts, and we want to construct that too. And then what we can do, so these are going to be embedded in the map itself. We need to pull those action maps. We need to populate these lists. This is tricky. So this code needs to run first. Okay, we still need to, yeah, we still need, yeah. I don't know, I like things that dynamically handle themselves. I wonder if there's a way to do that. So the easy way of doing this, I can imagine, is, because we need something to look through to add them into a list, right? We also need to make sure these lists are generated in the correct order. So this will drive each input list. So this one needs to run first, and then the inputs will be gathered on each context. Now the easy way of doing it, I would think, would be to basically make like a list of contexts, for example, but then you need a separate game object. Right, I want to be smarter than that. I like doing things dynamically, and I'm getting better at it. Because at the end of the day, I hate, like, it's always bad to duplicate data, right? The data's already there in our input action map. There must be a way of getting them out dynamically. Oh yeah, but it's not a list of input action maps, that's why. Our control No, wait, because we've got the input action asset, which has a sub component of input action map within it. So I think we can say for each input action map, get map in input assets. It doesn't like that. Okay, it's saying cannot convert input action to input action map. Yeah, because I didn't say input action maps. There we go. Mwah! Unity. I doubted you when I first saw this input system because I didn't understand it. I thought it was way too convoluted and too complex, and I was screaming at it, and I was so upset. It's taken me so long to understand it, but now I finally understand it, and it's taught me a lot about about how to do this stuff myself. And yeah, it actually is. It's fucking great. It's so well done. But it is very. It is quite a steep curve, learning curve. Okay, that's actually great. So we can now just go and get each. We can do that dynamically now. We can just control contexts. Wait, we're getting a list of. Oh yeah. We're getting a list. Oh no, chicken and an egg. I've come across a chicken and an egg situation now. Because what I could do is I could say, okay, for each action map, find the context in contexts that matches that map. But the problem is context hasn't had time to build itself yet. So now we need to do it the other way around. We need to make sure the contexts build themselves first. And then this parent, which has a list of contexts, can then check those contexts to see if the action map has a context associated with it. Let me think about this, but we can't have more than one instance of a context. See, what I would normally do is I would normally just stick it on a game object because that's how you create instances, basically. But you can also dynamically create instances. I'm sure there's a way of doing this. There's no way we can get 99% there and not have the last 1%. There's got to be a way of doing it. Because I think we could just create the instances here in memory, couldn't we? You create an instance of a control context in memory and then link the reference of its object class type within the list of class types. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can do that, but then I've got to do it in the right order, like I said. Let's work backwards then. So what we would essentially do is we would say if control contexts, we need to iterate through control contexts now. So we would do int index equals 0 while index. What are you looking through control contexts though? But we're saying for each action map in get map. So our outer loop is the action maps, and our inner loop is to check all the contexts. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Index plus plus. And then we can say if control contexts at position index dot action map is get map. So we find a match. We find that this map has a context. Then we can just create a new instance of the. Right, no, but no. I'm thinking of this the wrong way around. We don't have the instance yet. Right, this is the assumption that we have the instance. Yeah, but our list is empty, isn't it? But wait, aren't we just doing it for each action map anywhere? Yeah, we are, aren't we? Yeah, so we do want to create it here. Yeah, we do want to do it here. Yeah, basically all we do is we say, okay, what's the name? What did the name was that we gave it? UI nav. What we can basically say is, if you find an action map that is not UI nav, yeah, we don't even need an index driver for this. Okay, here's what we do. We need to add these in. So we say, and there's no index though, is there? Yeah, no, we don't need this part anymore, because we basically just say, for each input map, if the map is not UI nav, then we basically want to create a new instance of a control context. So we construct the control context here. So we can say control context ctrl-con equals new control context. We construct it here. Yeah, that makes sense. And then we can say control context. I want a small c for that one. Control context dot action map equals get map. And now we can go in and grab all the controls and assign each control for that action map. Oh, this is beautiful. And then the last thing we do when we're finished with that is we say add this to our control contexts list. So we can say control contexts add our new control context. But we don't do that yet, because first of all we have to go and find all the controls. Alright, so then we can say for each input action get action in get map, and we want to say if get action dot name starts with PC for player customizable, then you guessed it, we can add that to the list for this particular control context. So control context, not that one, action list add get action. Oh, this is fucking beautiful, this. Mwah! This is so nice. It's going to be so nice. So what we should see now when we press run is it'll find all the correct action maps. All the, what's the word I'm looking for? Viable? Qualifying? You know what I mean. Yeah, basically it'll ignore UI nav because I don't want that one customizable, and it will find all the controls that start with PC. And if we press run, we should see it populate itself. It's hard to inspect these now. There's our two control contexts. Yeah, we can't inspect them because they don't really mean anything. We can make that private now. But what we can do is we can query one of them to make sure it's correct. So that can be in a private list, actually. We don't even need access to it. That needs to be public in the inspector so we can set it, just in case we want to piss around with different input action assets. But yeah, that's basically it. We now have a list of all of the control maps, all of the actions that we're setting up in an input system, and we can switch contexts. We can say, okay, this one's for walking, this one's for gliding, this one's for driving, and then present those to the player. And we can either choose to like let the player switch contexts. We could display the context depending on where they're at. This is what I'll probably do, is if you press start while you're gliding, and then you go to customize controls, it will show you the gliding controls. if you press start while driving and you go to customize controls, it'll automatically show you the driving controls, because there's no reason not to say, okay, whatever the active control scheme is right now, show these buttons. The player will still be able to change tabs or whatever and say, okay, yes, I'm driving right now, but I actually want to change my sprint button because I just had an idea, and we'll let them like shift over to that. But by default, the system should be like, okay, you're in this context right now, driving, let's say, so I'm going to show you the driving controls when you go to customize controls. And we can do that with this easily. Beautiful. I am very pleased with that. All right, now what we need is a UI system that lets the player fuck around with all this stuff. So that's going to be fun. Ooh, isn't it? Isn't it? All right, where do we start? Well, it's going to need its own canvas. Let me copy one of these other canvases first, just so I don't have to piss around with it. I don't know, whatever. Just copy that one. I'm going to call it controls canvas. Okay, so let's just close these other canvases. So controls canvas. And for now I'm going to get rid of everything. I'm just going to give it a background that we can customize or do whatever we want with it. So let's just fill the screen to give us a background. I'll just make it black for now. I'd like a dark grey or whatever. There we go. Okay, and then probably as a child of that, I would think we'll call that background. But it doesn't need to be a child. We'll make it a sibling. We'll make it a sibling. I think that's better. Well, we're going to want a... Now we need a control class. Oh, God. This is what happens when you start getting better at this stuff. You can give yourself more shit to do. Kind of. Okay, so how do we make a control class? Well, we need to think about what do we need for it. Okay, so this is getting quite hairy, actually. No, it's going to be fine. So I'm going to call this big window. So we have to think of the parent level. So at the parent level, this thing is going to be UI controls, essentially. That'll do for now. And then on a sub level of that, what we're going to need is a list of, you guessed it, controls. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to break this down into what does this thing need to hold. So essentially, we're going to have individual components, which is like a mappable control, isn't it? We're basically listing mappable controls. So let's just break this down. So we're going to have a mappable control. That mappable control has a name, which we need to present to the player. It also has a context. So above this actually is context shifting. Yeah, so we're not even starting from the top level here, we're starting from the middle level, but that's fine. Sometimes you have to work in weird directions. So we know our mappable control is going to have a name, and then we need some way of showing what is mapped to that control. So let's call that mapping. Now, in many cases, like on gamepad, the mapping should be an image. Because and those images are going to change based on what controller you've got. So if we're going to make it this good, which I do want to do, those mappings are going to get quite complicated. So let's just break down the possibility for mappings. So we're going to need PS pad mappings. We're going to need PS Xbox mappings. we're going to need keyboard mappings. What about mouse? Well, something that represents the mouse. We're going to need mouse mappings. Switch control. Does anyone really use switch controller on PC? I think that's more than enough for now. As long as I can show Xbox controller to Xbox controllers and PlayStations to PlayStations, I'm reasonably happy with that. There is also a Steam. There's so many controllers out there, but like, you know, gotta draw the line somewhere. But yeah, even that is better than a lot of games that I'm seeing. I mean, bloody Tower Fantasy, plenty of games don't even support freaking DualSense. Now, if you really want to get down to brass tacks, there are actually different images for like DualShock 4 and DualSense and DualShock 3. But nah, fuck it. I'm just going to say PlayStation gets PlayStation, Xbox gets Xbox, and then we need some for keyboard and some for mouse. So looking at this, it seems to me that the best way to solve this problem is we're going to need to present an image. So we know we're going to have name, so we can use a text component for this. So let's just put what type of component we need. So we need a text component for this, and we need an image component for our mapping for this. Is that all we need? I think we need we need feedback. I think it's text. It could either be text or image feedback. Text would do the job. So what do I mean by feedback? So if you're on a control, now we could put feedback outside of this component. We could put anywhere on the screen, you know what I mean? Press the button you want for this control. But I think it would be better if where the controls are listed, as you highlight over one, okay, I'm on sprint, I want to remap sprint, there's some text within this sprint row that says, you know, press the button now that you want to use. Because also we have to do this thing where we need to check to make sure that the control that is being mapped is unique. If the player already used, let's say they want to use, I don't know, L2 for sprint, and they already used L2 for aim, well, we should tell them, sorry, you already used this one. We can't do both. So we need some way to talk back to the give the instructions, give the player some feedback. So there you go, our mappable control. But above that, we need context shifting, right? Because we had our walking, driving. So when we show the mappable controls, we can either, and there's different ways. So how do we handle context shifting? Well, there are two ways to do it, right? And this is what I like to do. I like to give the player options. So here's what I like to do. I always think this is the best way of doing it. Basically make a filter for each context, and then make one that just shows them all. Now, if we're going to go that way, then all needs a way to display which context relates to which control. So that means at this level, we need to be able to show the context if all. Now, if we've changed the context, we would have something above here instead, which says, okay, this is the context you're currently looking at, right? So like from a UI perspective, if you imagine like tabs at the top of the, window, that would be this, right? You switch from the all tab to context 1 tab to context 2 tab. The problem is if you switch to the all tab, you still need this, because otherwise you're just going to list all the controls and the player won't have a clue what's doing what. I mean, you could maybe figure it out depending on what game it was, but really, you know, it would be nice to just visually separate those for the player so the player can see, oh yeah, I see these are, you see me play games, right? Give them as much help as possible, and it's just nice, it just keeps it organized. So this is what we need our system to be. So how do we do that? I'm glad you didn't ask. Well, we've already got our context classes, which are automatically generated, so that's nice. We already have the data, so that's nice. So we're going to have some context shifting at the top here, like a tab system. So that's the first thing we're going to need to do. Okay, so then what we can do is we can make a control for this. At its most simple form, what we can do is we can let's call it CTRL context. Okay, so we've got a CTRL context. We can put a grid layout on this, and we can say constrain it to only one row. And then what we can do is we can create an image to represent this context, and whatever, we'll make it whatever color for now, doesn't really matter. Let's just make it this disgusting green, doesn't really matter. Right, so let's pretend that this is context 1 and this is context 2 and this is all. For example, all would be at the top. Now we can start to shape this. So what we want to do is go to our control context, which has the grid layout, and space these out. And I think they want to be a lot wider than that. And we just kind of figure out what sort of shape we want. What we also want to do is, because it's completely dynamic, we don't know how many contexts the game's going to have. Each game will be different. I want to give it room to grow. So if this is our window here that we're displaying controls in and everything, I don't know, I would probably need to set this above this actually, but that's probably too big now. But something like that, we can show different control contexts there. And what I also want to do is make sure that's centered. So at the moment it's starting in upper left, so we'll start it in upper center. So as new contexts are made, it will center itself. So I like that. Now we need something to display what context it is. This is where we start making prefabs. So we want a child context, a child component. I'm just going to use a legacy text for now, and we'll call this txt context. Txt name. It's already going to be part of a context class, so we don't have to say context again. We know it's a context. Okay, so now we can start to see something appear. So I can make that a bit bigger, I think. Make sure it's centered. It's got a bit more room. We don't know how big these names are going to be as well, bear in mind. But you know, a good example would be all, driving, walking, stuff like that. So I think that seems fine. Maybe make it bold. It looks horrendous right now, but these are just core systems that we're building. When we start making a game, what we'd probably want to do is, you know, start polishing things and be like, okay, let's make this look good now. But as long as the systems are there and it's all working, then we can build off of that. Yeah, I'm going to give it a bit more room. Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, if it can fit CTRL context in there, I think it should be fine. But better safe than sorry. We could obviously change these as well if we needed to. Let's just set it at 24. I think that's fine. So if you imagine you're playing a game right now, and you can see. Now what we also need for a control like this, there's lots and lots of ways to do it. We could change the background color. How do we know which context is currently active? Right, we need a way to display that. Now we could just grab the image and then say, okay, we're going to make it bright green if it's active or whatever. So we can do that in code. Or if we want anything visually more fancy than that, then we would need to do that at this point. What is sometimes nice to do, to be honest, is give it like a box that's underneath that acts as like an outline. So it kind of acts a bit like an outline. Let me just figure that out. So there's our all. Let's make one called walking. I suppose it wouldn't be walking, it would be on foot, wouldn't it? On foot. Driving. So we can get a feel for what it's going to look like. On foot. Driving. Yeah, we could just change the background color, but let's see what else we could do. Right, so that's got a grid layout out on it, and it has to have a grid layout on it. So what we could actually do is make another smaller image inside this, and this one acts as the real background. So basically that becomes the outline. Okay, we can't name that outline because we'd probably want to name it whatever the context is so we can see what it is. But then this one becomes the inner. And we could replace these with images as well, of course. And if we make this the inner, why is that one in the middle? Okay, it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to belong to that one. It must have just been where I copied it from. So we want to put it over this one because it belongs to this one. You belong to me, you stupid button. Hey, hey. Right, and if we make that a little in a bit like this, then what that gives us the ability to do is when one's selected, we can just give it a white outline or whatever color we want. And then it's just clearer which one is currently active then. And then we can display controls like L1 or R1 or whatever we want to switch contexts, or click it with the mouse or whatever. And I'd probably also display. Well, for a UI controls class, that's not a bad idea actually. Because that's got the grid layout on it. Okay, so let me show you something neat. So what we do now is we make this a prefab so that we can dynamically generate them when we need them. So at the moment we've got these core prefabs, which is exactly what this is. Okay, let me rename this to context controls. And then I'll call this control context. Otherwise the prefab name's going to confuse me. And then this is inner background, I guess. It's good to name things clearly. And then we know that txt is name. That's fine. So now I'm going to drag this here to make it a prefab. Now we've got our prefab. And what we need to do is make a class that handles this UI. Right, so we're going to make a, let me think about this though. There are a few ways of doing this. Because we could just give a parent class and make that do everything. Yeah, okay, let's do that. Just trying to think of all the different ways of doing it. I don't like to have too many subscripts. I want to try and make this kind of fewer scripts if possible. Okay. I don't really have any UI scripts right now. Control context. Do we want to make a folder for control scripts? This is going to be our third control script. I think it's fine. Okay, so I'm going to call this one UI_CTRL for UI control. We're going to give it to the controls canvas. There it is. And the first thing this thing needs to know about is our prefab, actually. Okay, so this is our control context prefab, isn't it? So I'm just going to call it context prefab. I'll link that in the inspector. So go back to our prefabs, drop our control context onto here, because that's exactly what we want. And then we could present some options for the control context prefab, such as, I think we need UI for this. So I want a color 32, which I'm going to call context border, and a public color 32, which I'm going to call context normal, and I'm going to do a color 32 context select. So then what we can do is customize this on a per game basis, but I might, you know, I might really get fancy with a game and, you know, start adding graphics and stuff. I probably will, but it'd probably still be nice to have some level of customization. So if we go back to our, we've actually lost it because we made it prefab. UI controls, control context. I just need to grab the prefab and stick it back in there so I can grab the color. I mean, not that I'm like in love with that color or anything, but it's just, I've got to put something in there. So there's our original color. And I'll put that in our controls canvas as the normal color. Okay, and then the selected color, it's normally better just to grab whatever color you picked originally and then just kind of, you know, make it stand out a bit. You can even shift it a bit yellow or whatever. Yeah, that's fine. Just make it really obvious that it's selected. All right. Okay, so the next thing our control script needs to do is it needs to look at those contexts that have been added in that list, which I made private. So I'm going to need to either give that script a public function so it can return that list. I'm going to need to make them public again. Or I could just have this script do the same thing the other script did. But it's always better not to do that. Once you start storing information about something that's going to drive other things, it's best to get it from the horse's mouth. Otherwise you end up duplicating data and things might not match and things can go wrong. It's just bad practice. Okay, so how do I want to do this? Do I want to return a list? I think that's fine. I think a function is good, actually. I think a function is good because it keeps things nice and neat in the inspector, and then we can just return a list. So here's how we do that. What we do is we make a public list function, and the list is going to return a list of control contexts, and then we give it a name, and I'm just going to call it get contexts. And then we can just return control contexts. There we go. Now we can keep it private, and in our control UI, as long as it has a reference to this, and we'll put this in system. Okay, what I'm also learning to do as well, let me make sure, see if I can do this, because you can kind of do this. It's like everything's a hierarchy like this, right? So we have system, which knows about log, you know, whatever, anti-cheat, whatever it happens to be, right? UI systems. But if once you start having subsystems, it's good if you can have the parent systems know about their own subsystems, so they're addressable at different levels in the hierarchy. Like I got DB, I learned this from DB, right? So for my database system, I had a subsystem. What the hell was it? I can't remember what it was. It was something. And then I made sure that the subsystem, which is a DB subsystem, like let's say DB game, for example, that DB can be accessible from DB game. What's the advantage of that? The advantage of that is then your system doesn't need to know about all the children, and as you develop them, you don't have to keep updating it. You basically make the parent system, give it to the subsystems, and then this, whenever you want to get this, you basically can just go through systems DB, and then DB knows about this, so you can just get it from there. So I want to do that with this, right? Because now we've got, where is it? Yeah, because basically I've set control in the main system, so system can know where control is, but now I need to be able to access control context. So I shouldn't need to add control context now to system. I could, but I think that's a bad idea, because really control, like this, you know what I mean? What's a child of what? Well, control context is a child of control. So what we really need to do is teach control about control context. So let's go back into our control script. And I'll put it above the list of control contexts. Did I leave it public? No, it's private. Yeah, okay. So it's control context, and again, keep it lowercase. I'm learning. Because then when we address it, we can just say lowercase, lowercase, lowercase. It's just easier to type out. Beautiful. So now that can know about. Oh, we don't have a game object with control context on it yet. I mean, to be fair, it would actually just be this. So I know it's a bit weird, right? Because it means we're adding it here instead of there. So we're still having to reference it. Yeah, and we're going to need to add it to this as well. Yeah, I was also just looking at my hierarchy and thinking, do I want control context here, or should I give it to the controls canvas? And here's the reason why I'm not giving it to the controls canvas. First of all, it's a system level, so it should be running at core, like, you know, at core level. Yeah, and secondly, like, that means it would only load and populate itself when the player goes into map controls, which you might be okay, but I can imagine, like, it seems useful if I can just ask my system and then ask the control context, hey, how many action maps do we have right now? This is probably how we'll switch action maps, to be honest. I'll probably use, because where else am I going to put it? This seems like the perfect place to put a function where I can say, okay, I want to change action maps now. We're driving. Oh, I want to change action maps now. We're walking. Oh, I want to change action maps now. We're doing whatever the fuck we're doing. This is the perfect place to put that code, because that's exactly what this script is all about, right? So it definitely wants to be on the core level. Okay, we've got our action map and our action list. Is that's public? Oh yeah, because I'm still debugging. That will become private because there's no reason to like flood the inspector with this shit. But because I'm new to this, I just want to be able to keep an eye on it so I know what the fuck I'm doing. But that seemed, and I think we already know that that's working, isn't it? Right, so this is the script that has a list of all of its action, all of the context actions. But we only have one instance of it, don't we? Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay, so I'm not used to working like that. Okay, I just noticed a problem. So the weird thing about control context is the first ever class that I've made that I wasn't going to attach to a game object because I'm like, well, all we're really doing is pulling data from the input action map, the input action asset system. So since that data already exists, why should we need to like manually manage it? Let's make it dynamic so it manages itself. So the issue now is, if I add it to a game object, we have a specific instance of that class. But we don't want a specific instance of that class because we want to dynamically generate instances on the fly instead. So I've come across, it's always the way this works. In creating a new solution, I've created a new problem because it's like, well, if I don't have an instance of the class in the inspector, how can I talk to it? Because we need to know which instance we're talking to. This is a control context class. So each one of these instances is related to an action map. Maybe I confused myself. Maybe what I really want is I want to be able to access the UI control, but UI control sits on here, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, I need to go backwards in my brain to understand why I wanted to reference that in the first place and then see if there's another solution for it. What the hell was I even doing? So I set my colors. Yeah, I confused myself. Okay. Yeah, because what I was thinking is, okay, we're 3 levels deep now on UI control, and I need to grab my input action map, and I don't want to reference it in this script. I want to get better at this like inherit from parent thing, and start getting better at this whole chain inheritance thing because it's super powerful once you get the hang of it. And I think I confused myself because I'm like, well, I should not need to address. I should not need to add it to system to grab that. I should be able to get it from UI. But UI is a subsystem of system anyway. So I thought I was deeper than I am. I'm actually it's all in control, isn't it? This is where our input action asset is. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of confused myself. We already have the control references system. Okay, so all we need to do is, like we do with all scripts for this to work, we just need to reference system. So the way we can do that is we declare a private system on awake or start, wherever, it doesn't really matter. Actually, this will probably be an on-enable script, to be honest, because it's a UI script. And UI scripts should really be on-enable scripts. we want to find that system. So it's basically just gameObject.find core and then get the component of system. And now we have full access to a system on all of its subcomponents. So in order to get the input, because I need the input action map now so that I can start listening for controls and mappings. I don't know though, it's kind of weird. What the hell am I even doing at this point? Yeah, I need to generate those UI control tabs for each action map, and the action maps I assume do sit on the UI system, don't they? On the control system, rather. Well, we have a list of contexts, and each context represents an action map. This is why I was getting confused. But that's the way object inheritance works by default anyway. Like, we can access the action map through control actions because it just works that way. I don't need that level. Yeah, I don't need that level of inference or whatever, because I can just infer it from the parent. Okay, so what we basically need is a private list which I don't have the class reference. I might just make it a list of strings for the context names. I don't know, let me think about this. I just realized I made a mistake as well. Okay, we need to edit this control context. The reason why is we don't have a button on it, and I want this to be clickable with the mouse as well. So in order to do that, we need to add the legacy button control to it so we can make it clickable, and then we can just so I know what it is though. Button, I should call it BTN, that's fine. I don't even need a text control, and it should be completely invisible. And also I should have unpacked the prefab completely so that we can go and change it now. There we go, it's updated. And now in my canvas we need to teach it what it is again. There we go. So now we've got a button. Yeah, the reason why is actually, do we need lists of buttons? We don't need a list of buttons to add listeners for them. We just need a button function. I don't even think we need a list here, to be honest. Alright, so I'm gonna write a function called button switch context, which is going to handle the button clicks from the mouse when we change control contexts. And this is going to take a button reference and I'll call it button clicked. All right. I'm also going to make a function called getContexts. Or build context tabs. Or we could just put it in on enable. No, we don't need it in. Well, if I call the function from on enable, we're going to be doing the same thing anyway. I'll just put it here for now. We'll figure out if we need to move it. Okay, I will use a list, but I'll just do it temporarily in memory here. The reason why is because I want to add one for all, and it's just easier to do it that way. Because that way, what I can do is I can say list some strings, right? Context names equals a new list of strings. Then I can say context names, and we know it's clear, so I don't even have to clear it. Context names add show all to that list, and then I can say for each string context names. Fuck. No, I don't. I need to fill out list with contexts now. This is kind of awkward though. No, that's not a good way of doing it, because then we're working with strings. Let me think about this. Yeah, we can. No, we can use strings. We can just make sure the name matches the string. It probably is the easiest way to do it. I think it probably is the easiest way to do it. Right, so we made a list, because we made a list of get contexts, didn't we? So we can declare a list of control contexts, which we can say control cons, and instead of saying equals new, we can say equals system control get contexts. So now our control system context manager will return all the contexts to this script. So now we've got a list of contexts. So that's the list we need to iterate through and add the string names to cont names. I know it's a bit weird, but this is the easiest way to add, because what we're really doing is we're adding a fake context which doesn't really exist called show all, but it's not really a context, it's a UI option. Do you know what I mean? So that's why we can't drive it from context, because if we drive it from context, we don't have an all in the database, so we can't use that. So we have to fake it basically. So for each control context get con in control cons. So now we iterate through the actual contexts. We want to say context names add get con.name. There you go. So now we've got a list of all the buttons we want to create. Yeah, I think I will put this in a separate function because it's getting a bit beefy. I'm trying to keep the names short. I'll call it generate context controls. I gotta think. That sounds confusing. It is confusing. They're tabs, really, aren't they? Context tabs. I think I prefer context tabs. I know what tabs are, and I know what I'm referring to if I call it that. But context controls, I'll be like, well, that's the name of our class. What do I mean by context controls? I need to be... I could even say UI context tabs or context UI tabs. I think context tabs should be fine. Alright. Otherwise, I'll see that in the future and think, what the hell am I even doing in this script, in this function? I didn't generate the list here, which we need to now do here. And then we'll just call this function instead. Generate. What I could also do, let me think. We don't have any way of knowing whether that previously loaded or not. We can do a first run. Because context controls are never ever going to... This is actually really cool thing to do as well. Check it out. because you can use this. You can use this for two purposes. Yeah, this is a really neat trick. Here's an even better way of doing it. Make a public bool that says is ready and set it to false. When you've done everything you need to do for the first time, set is ready to true. That way you can say if is not ready, then generate context tabs. And then once everything is finished, after onEnables ran for the first time, you can say is ready equals true. Now we're probably going to want to do some other stuff in this first run scenario, so I'll just pad that out so we can add some more stuff. So then that way you know that everything that's inside of this if statement is only going to run once for the first time, and every time onEnable gets called after that, it'll just skip over that, because it's like, I already generated my lists, I already built my buttons, because those contexts are never going to change during runtime. This is something that happens at developer time. So like that, for the life of that build, it's always going to be the same. So you can skip over it. You don't need to load them again and again every single time the UI opens up. Oh, what's your go-to image editor? I would say Photoshop. DGTV. I recognize that name. I think you were in either there. What's your go-to image editor? Yeah, I would say Photoshop. 100%. Probably not here anymore. Yeah, I've got TTS turned off because I really need to get my head around all this stuff. Alright, so we're still not done. All we've got is a list of basically names that we want to show on buttons, but we need to do some string checking now because we need to know, do we though? I suppose we don't really. All we're really doing is generating a button for each context name, if I'm being honest. Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways of doing this. Because what I could have done is I could have made a custom class on each control context, right? And then that control context could have been like assigned to a specific map. But then do you see what the problem with that is? If you want to add a show all, which doesn't really exist, then what the hell do you assign to it? Do you leave it null? So it's just like, essentially, I think that was completely unnecessary. I think it's better to do it the way I'm doing it now. Because either way, you've got to do like string validation checks. So you might as well just do them here. Alright, yeah, so this is it now. Now it's time to spawn these buttons. So what we do is for each string in get names, hang on, no, string. Do the wrong way around. For each string get names in controls, where's our list of strings? There it is. Cont names, context names. So now we know every single button that we want to make and what we want to write on it. So we can say game object, new object. Well, let's say new context object, just to be super clear what we're doing. And we want to say equals instantiate, and we want to take our prefab UI control sits on here. That doesn't, yes. I forget it. Oh, it is on canvas. This is this one. Context prefab we called it. So we want to take the context prefab, and the parent we want to put it on is a child called UI controls and then another child called context controls. So what we can actually do to make things neater, it's better to create that transform now. I'm gonna create a new transform. I'm gonna call it get root onto capital T, and that wants to equal transform.find, and it's at UI controls. Wrong case. UI controls / context controls dot transform. Now we can reference get root for where we want to instantiate that prefab. By doing that, it will automatically inherit its parent scale and everything else. So if we want to make visual changes, we won't run into any problems. I like to change the name of these things. So new context object dot name equals whatever the name of this context is. And I'll prefix it with like con underscore. So they're all going to say con and then the name of the context for each context. Okay, so that's nice. We then want to need to set normal and border to the normal and border colors because these might have been changed. Okay, so for that we need, well, let's do the name first. So if we look at our control context, we're looking for txt name. So we want new transform find txt name get components text dot text equals get names. Should have said get name really, because that's not a plural thing, is it? It's a singular thing. So I like to be clear because it just makes more sense when you read it. Yeah, it's a singular name. So get name. Okay, so we change the name inside the tab. Then we want to set the border and the normal color to the whatever's set here in case we made changes. So the border is at, it's actually on the context itself. If you look, it's a raw image component. So we can just say new context object get components raw image color equals, actually I missed something because this would mean they were all selected. So we really need like a border on border off. So I'm going to rename that to border on and make a border off. Otherwise, if you don't have two states, then you can't see the difference. There's no difference. There's no point in creating states if you have one. It's like saying, would you like to see my record collection? There it is. That's that one record that I own. Yeah, it's not a collection, you doyle. Okay, that's fine. Now we can say color context border off color. I mean the first button, but we'll put some logic in for all that later. Really, the first button border would want to be selected on by default, right? Because we need to show some context. But again, we're probably going to do some clever ass thing where we can check the game state to see what context are you in right now, and whatever context we're in right now, it will automatically switch it to that control scheme. And that way the player sees straight away the controls that are relevant to whatever they're doing at that time, which I think is really, really nice quality of life. Okay, so that's the border, and then we also need to change its normal color, which is inner background. Okay, so new context object dot transform dot find inner background get components raw image color equals context normal. There we go. So we're basically creating a button in a switched off state for now. We've given it a name. We've changed the text inside of it. We've instantiated and spawned it. That's basically it. And then once it's done all of those for every single context, we can say is ready equals true. And then we know that our UI did everything it needed to do and found out what controls existed and maps and everything else. And we don't need to ever do it again, even though it's in on enable. So that's a nice little trick. Button switch context. Oh, we also need to register the button class for this as well. Yeah, so what we also need to do is we need to say new. We need to find the button now. Okay. I'm going to say button get button equals new context object transform find. We called it btn for button, and we want to get component of button. Okay, then we need to register an event handler. So we need to say get button. You know what? I'm new to this. So let me just grab that from my nav UI, because I'm not sure, there's some weird symbols and stuff in it that I can never quite remember what the exact. So I'm brand new to this dynamic button event handling registration thing, and you have to get it just right. Nav UI node, it's on one of my nav. Where did I use it? There it is. There's our syntax. Which one was I working on? UI control. Yep. So we say get button dot on click dot add listener. Then you open a parenthesis. This is the bit that's really confusing. You define a empty method with inside that, which is really weird. Then it's a lambda expression. Then you reference the function, which in this case is going to be button context switch, and then we know that this is asking for a button, so we can just say this, and it doesn't like that. Unity Engine UI button, UI control. Oh, yeah, get button then, I guess. Yeah, because this is the script that we're running, of course. I'm an idiot. Right, so then what that means is basically every time this button is clicked, this function is called, and the button that was clicked is passed to this button here. So now we can start adding logic to say, okay, well, if this context was clicked, here's what we do. If this context was clicked, here's what we do, etc., etc. So we can tell which context was clicked if the user is using a mouse. So there we go. That is all looking pretty good. For now, I'm just going to put a debug.log. And we'll just say button clicked dot name was clicked, just so we can make sure that what we've got so far is all working. All right, that was a lot, and we're just getting started. That was a lot, but we're just getting started. Okay, so we need to delete the prefab out of here so we can make sure it's working. All right, let's run it and see what happens. Let's just run it. So what we should see, here's what we should see if it's all working. What we should see is, if we go into our input maps, we should see context 1 and context 2, and it'll say all as well. It says show all, and then it should say context 1, and then it should say context 2. And that's a lot of code just to make it do that. But it's not really just doing that, is it? It's basically pulling these from our actual input action assets. So as we're building the game, we never have to look at it again, and it just does it all itself, which is actually pretty nuts. And it's going to save me so much time in the future. Okay, nothing actually showed up, which is kind of concerning. Do I have... Yeah, I've got the controls canvas open. Did we get any errors? I don't think so. Let's try running it again. Okay, we've got a null reference exception. So it's saying that our system manager doesn't know where control is. That's weird because I remember linking it. Yeah, it's literally right there. It's a sibling. Okay, I'll tell you what's probably happening. This sometimes happens. It's either it's probably UI control. Yeah, it's probably control context doesn't know where the other thing is, the action maps, because it hasn't had time to load them yet. Oh, what am I doing? Okay, so how do we solve that problem? Well, it's time to get serious. Yeah, these scripts all have to be ready and running in the right order for all this stuff to work. Otherwise, one piece of code will run before the other piece of code got a chance to run, and it's a whole heap. There's a few ways of solving this problem. One of them is to open up your project settings and actually order the scripts in the order that you want them to run in, and Unity will actually do that for you. The problem is with a multi-layered system like this, even that isn't always enough to solve every single timing problem, like sequencing problem. So I like this. I like this way of doing it, where we'll just put a public bool is ready, and then we can make sure I shouldn't really need to do it with the system manager level. It's super important the system manager gets all these things first. Really, system manager has public references still as these things anywhere. So I don't think it would have been system manager that didn't know where it was, because that's not even dynamically linked. It's actually linked in the inspector. It has to be the other one. It has to be UI control couldn't find whatever. It probably hadn't finished building. Let me just run it again. So it's saying in UI control line 29. It's asking for a public function from control cons, which is to get the contexts. We're trying to get it through system.control. Yeah, it's not this part that's the problem, because IntelliSense is really good, right? If control wasn't linked in system, it wouldn't even show up in IntelliSense. This would produce an error in the editor, in the actual script. So the issue is that control cons is null referencing. Let's have a look at control. Wait, control cons. Control, interesting. Maybe my new way of trying to instantiate at runtime is not as simple as I thought. Right, let's just go through logically what's happening. So it references SYS, so we have access to that. If the thing is not ready, it will generate context tabs. It's control, I think, that's not ready. Public list control con. Yeah, so it's probably. It's probably the control class that isn't ready yet, I would think. Okay, so all I've done is I've put a public switch on control that says, look, when you're ready, change this to true, so that when we reference it, where were we getting the null reference? $29. Okay. So this is quite nice because we're calling a public function. This is the easiest thing in the world to fix. Get to context. I don't know if it actually is. Actually, I thought it was, but it's not. You can't run a list returning function in a separate thread or coroutine, so we can't use await methods. So the await method's going to have to be at this level. So what we should do then is we need to make this a coroutine. If I could actually spell. And we say while system control is not ready, yield return null. And change this to a start coroutine. What that will basically do is force it to wait for control cons to complete. I'm surprised it didn't throw an error actually, because what if it is ready? Then this path wouldn't return a value. Interesting. I was expecting it to tell me that actually, and it didn't. Interesting. Okay, that's really weird. It's like it genuinely can't find control in system. That's kind of weird. I've never seen it do that in a publicly linked script before. Because Unity loads these values from the inspector like way before you even like even attempts to start loading the scene. So it should, and it's literally self-referenced. Are we trying to get? We're trying to call a function in control, aren't we? System control is ready. Oh, I'm an idiot. No, that was supposed to say is not ready. Oh, do you put the? Oh, you must put the thing here. Yeah, it has to be there. Okay. I did type it, but I typed it in the wrong place, and it must have auto-corrected me. Same issue? That's so weird. Yeah, it genuinely cannot find control in system. That's weird. Okay, let's just make sure that control. Let's just make sure the control scripts, control and control context. Runs before. Control, then control context. And where's the error thrown from? UI control. Let's make sure they run in that order and see if we still get an error. I must be missing something. There's something really weird going on here. This is a publicly linked field. How can you not find it? What am I missing? I'm missing something. This has nothing to do with what I thought it was. It wasn't. It's not that it was not having time to finish. So I'm going to put this back to a void. So it makes it easier to debug because we can actually see the jump straight to the line that's causing the issue. Oh, it's because we've got this in here. What is happening? Okay, I want to test something. I want to see if it is a queuing. I want to see if it is a like an order issue. Border on we want to be white. Border off can just be invisible. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to disable the UI control script until it's had a chance to do everything it wants to do, and then see if we still get the null reference. Yeah, we do. So this has nothing to do with the sequence of scripts. What's wrong with my throat? It's all the vaping. Tickly goddamn throat. Oh my god. Why are you tangling all over my legs, you stupid keyboard? Also, why did you run out of battery when I wanted to start work today, you little shit? I swear this keyboard, right, I haven't had it that long, but the battery, like... The battery's gone, like, just subsided to an unbelievable level. A factory reset it, I've done everything. Piece of trash. I knew I should have returned it when I got it though, because when I first tried to charge it, and then there's a shortcut on the keyboard that like lights up the length of the keyboard based on how full the battery is. And after fully charging it, the battery immediately, once I removed the cable, said it was at like 70%. And it's never gone past like 70% reported charge or whatever. And I thought, I have to return this now and then get a new one, because there's got to be something wrong with the battery. But then the next day, as I was getting ready to return it, like it lasted for like days and it was fine. And I was like, okay, maybe it's fine. It should be alright. But now it's like barely lasting a day. It's supposed to last like 3-4 days. And I'm worried it's just going to keep getting worse. And actually it was playing up like crazy yesterday. It would not connect to Bluetooth. Yeah, I think this keyboard's kind of trash. Anyway, right, what the hell is this error? Line 29. We are calling system control get contexts. And we're asking for a list to be returned of control context type. Nothing wrong with that. In control, I keep going into control context. That's the fucking class type that we want, not the fucking control. In control, we have a public list of control contexts called get contexts, in which we return the private list of control contexts. And the scripts UI control line 29. What are you even talking about? Oh, UI control line 29. Yeah, that's that one again. UI control, which came from UI control line 20, which will be the on enable or whatever. Well, it was where the method was called. This is so fucking weird. What is it that's the null reference though? System control or system control get contexts or the private list within control. Well, the error isn't thrown from control. The error is thrown from UI control when we try to reference control. I know something is majorly wrong. Hello, Frightful. How are you? Because even if we try to debug.log, right, system control is ready. What are you doing to me? Is ready. I think it'll null reference that. But it's publicly linked in the inspector. Okay, let me try something. Let me try restarting Unity. It could be a Unity 6 bug. It is in preview still. I know for a fact Unity 6 still has bugs. But this is just a weird bug to have, right? Why would it suddenly be upset about something publicly linked in an inspector? Which is a... It's such a sort of... Yeah, cause, like, it's publicly linked. It's right there. There's no reason that should fail to find. Right, I'm gonna leave that off for now, just to see what. Let's see what happens. Right, everything's running. There's no way that those previous scripts didn't get time to do whatever they wanted to do. Oh, you motherfucker. Ah, but the weird thing is... Oh, I left it turned off, that's probably why. It's probably... The script's probably still turned off. Yeah, I thought so. Alright, let's try running the script. Null reference exception. This is so weird. And it's null referencing exception just trying to get the is ready from control. Like, why the frick is this not finding control? That makes no sense. Can it find other systems? I'm curious. Because I could try publicly linking system if it can't get other systems. What system can we query? Does DB has an is ready? No, it probably should though. Oh, yeah, we can't put it there, can we? Call it test links. We'll say test links. This is in a static, isn't it? Oh, god damn it. I can't. Okay, use it on do it on a different script. Can't do it on this one. This one's static. What else can we check? Net. We could try net. I want not running net though. That's the problem. I don't really want to run net. That's a whole other rabbit hole I don't need to get into right now. What have we got on core systems? Net is still running though. Yeah, actually, yeah, net does run actually, because I have net set up in a way where it figures out if it's an online game or not, and it just won't do the online functionality if it doesn't need to. Oh, our log. Yeah, well, that's a great one to test log. That's basically why I made it. That was the whole point of making it in a way. Fucking hell. Okay, let's try writing to the log. This is a test log message. Oh, I forgot to put add. There. Can it do that? Okay, interesting. So the problem appears to be the link to system, which I'm actually really pleased about because I can fix that. Thank God. That's even though that's a bigger problem. If I can't get system, it's an easier problem to fix because it just means something's wrong with the linking in system. Oh, what a fucking idiot. No wonder it's not working. I forgot to put system equals. Why doesn't that produce an error? I never understood that. Ah, this is not the first time I've made this mistake. Duh, I wonder why it won't work. Oh my god. That is not the first time I've made that mistake either. Right, it should definitely work now. Yeah, that was driving me mad. I was like, wait, this makes no sense. Okay, so if it's all working, we should see each action map as a control context. Oh my god, we've got a different... Okay, I'd rather... That's good. That's good. No reference exception. Objects. For each control con, get con in control cons. List of control con equals system control get context. Yeah, it could be that it didn't have time to build its list yet. Get con.name, which means we do have to push that out as a coroutine. That's fine. Well, let's find out first before I start changing the structure of things. We can test that by close. No, wait, didn't I run that after everything had got a chance to run? So it can't. Ah, let me check it again. I think I did. I think I started it with the canvas closed, and then I waited a few seconds, and then I opened the canvas. So there's no way that it didn't have time to build its list. So that is not what that error is. Object not set to a reference of an object. God damn it. Oh, this text is so small. Right, I can read that. Unity bindings, throw helper. Object get name. Okay, yeah, I think I understand what's happening. Okay, well, let's just make sure. I'm just going to use Unity Engine as debug. I want the count of that list, and then I want to know exactly what index it's up to, I guess. Well, we can't get name, apparently. If we can't get name, control context. Does a control context have a name? No. It's action map. Okay, yeah. It's action map name. I made a mistake. Yeah. It's getcon. Oh my god, I'm losing my mind. It's getcon.actionmap.name. Yeah, that should work now. Also, we don't need the Unity engine apparently. Alright. I'm going insane. I'm going insane. I finally did it. I can't believe that took so long. I can. Okay, that is great. And then hopefully if we click one of these buttons, it should say which button was clicked. Button was clicked. Button was clicked. Button was clicked. Okay, the weird thing about that is it was supposed to say the name of the button. Button clicked dot name. Oh, I suppose the button's name is BT. Yeah, I suppose that makes sense actually. I should have said the parent's name. Yeah, I should have said button click dot transform dot parent dot name, because the button is just called button, but it's the parent's name we're interested in. So button clicked dot transform dot parent dot name. There we go. That'll work now. And now for the ultimate test, I want to make sure it all works. Now this could never happen in the real world. Ooh, did I save the script? I don't think I did. This could never happen in the real world, but let's say we wanted the UI to come up immediately when the game runs. Does it still work? It bloody well does! Awesome. It would never need to work that quickly, but it does, which is good to know. Yeah, brilliant. And then this time if we click the buttons, we should get show all, context show all was clicked, context 1 was clicked, context 2 was clicked. That is working perfectly. Okay, I'm really pleased with that. We still got the other part of this to do though, but I think I need a break. So we did context, so now we need to do for each mappable control, we're gonna go in and get each mappable control, present its name, put a little text box with some feedback to say like press the button you want or whatever the fuck, and then we need to get an image that represents the controls, not the action. So we need all the PlayStation stuff, all the Xbox stuff, keyboard and mouse stuff. So yeah, that's going to take a while just to generate all the assets and stuff for that. I do have a really cool thing that will help me though. Hang on a minute, because it's in my deepest, darkest. Yeah, there's nothing weird in here anywhere. Control prompts, but you never really know. Yeah, I have this great thing that I downloaded off the internet like a long time ago, and it has all of the different control scheme buttons and things. So we're going to need to feed all these in. Ooh, some of those are nice. Ooh, we could have a dark scheme and a light scheme. I may well do. I mean, we've got the assets, so yeah. So this is going to be some work, right? And then I also need to map every like control to a respective image as well. So this is actually quite a lot of work. But it should be awesome once it's set up. Well, this is why most developers will just buy a third-party asset like Rewired, but it's like almost $100. And I prefer to make my own because like I can make it my way, then I did it my way. And if we want to change anything, we can change anything, and you know, it's just I like learning anyway. I like to give myself the challenge. So we're definitely getting there, but yeah, the next job, we don't even really need to do this yet. This is more polishing, to be honest, like the images and stuff like that, because that is going to be a lot of work. Because what we need to do is create like a dictionary that stores image icons, like probably individual classes and stuff for each control. And think about how many controls there are. There's every letter of the alphabet. There's all the function keys. There's the numeric keys. There's all the PlayStation controls, all the Xbox controls. Like there's probably hundreds and hundreds of things that need to be manually assigned and attributed and stuff like that to get all this fully functional. Because you don't know which key the fucking player wants for jump or whatever, right? So you need to put them all in there. So it's a bitch, but I think, we'll get there. And then once it's done, it's done. And every game I make moving forward, we'll just use this system and it'll be like, yep, you can map all your keys, map all your buttons, do what you want. Knock yourself out. And we'll have full support for it. And then next year, when somebody brings out the world's first keyboard with 2,000 keys on it, and everybody starts using it, I'll jump out the window. That's basically how it goes. Yeah, I think I need a break though. I'm getting a headache as well. But this is going well. This is really, 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 really going well. But yeah, sometimes you'll see these weird, and they are clickbaity, right? You see these weird clickbaity thumbnails that are like, oh, learn to code faster. Oh, make a game in less than 10 minutes. Like, you've got the YouTubers who are like clickbaity, who are like, faster, faster, faster. Oh, get AI to make the next Tomb Raider game just by giving it 3 prompts. And like, first of all, none of that is realistic. And then secondly, I did see something that made me smile the other day, though, is some thumbnails from like guys who look like they've been doing this for a long time saying, you know what I mean, don't code fast, code slower and code better. Like, take your time and, think about it and don't rush into these things, and you can build such much better systems. I mean, at the end of the day, right, I made, what day was it when I made the whole thing? Yeah, I made that whole UI nav breadcrumb thing in one day. It took me a whole day. But I've got that now, and it works, and it's really impressive, and it like totally, manages itself. And you think about, we have like 350 of these fuckers in a year. If I could do work like that every single day, imagine having 350 systems by the end of the year that are like that. Where you're like, oh yeah, I made something on this day, and I made something on that day, and I made something on this day. And then you look back at the end of the year, and you're like, oh yeah, I've got stuff. I've got something that does that. Yeah, I've got something that does that. Yeah, I've got something that does that. And you just think how quickly you could have all those amazing systems. But you don't need, I'd rather code one good system a day than 10 shite systems a day. Because then you're stuck with those shite systems going forward as well, right? So I don't really care how long this takes me, as long as it's good and it works and it's like, yeah. The way I see it, it's a small price to pay. Couple of weeks. I mean, I'm trying to think. It has been a couple of weeks at this point, but yeah, a couple of weeks of my life. But now I've got some really good core systems in here now. Not all of them are finished. Not all of them are perfect yet. But I know that by the time I'm like ready to sort of move on from this thing is going to be fucking nuts, and I'll be able to just build my game. It'll be like, okay, I don't need to worry about this, I don't need to worry about that. I can just concentrate on like getting some assets in here, and how's the game going to play, how is it going to look, how's it going to feel, and I can just get into the creative stuff more, because all the core systems will just be there. And I can't wait. Honestly, it's looking so promising. Like, some of these systems, as I'm building them, I'm like, oh god, I can't wait. Like, I can't wait to use this. Like, I've made a debug log, and it does so much. Like, it will tell me what line the log came from, and which script it came from, and which game object it came from, and I can filter those by game object, by script. I can search for debugs. And I can do all this in the build. I have automatic build incrementation now. So the version number will increment each time I build it automatically. It saves all the update and metadata and stuff in the script for me automatically. I've got like build files that auto generate now. Stuff that I've wanted for ages, to be honest. And like, oh my god, it's just going to be nuts. I'm just going to be able to jump in and start actually making games inside of this thing, instead of having to like, you know, reinvent the wheel every single time I make a game. So yeah, I definitely want to take my time with it and make sure it's good, because like the way I see it, I genuinely feel like what I'm building now is the first version of something that I'm probably going to be using for the rest of my life. That's how major this is, I think. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, this, some of this code here, I will probably be fucking 80 years old and like still using some of this code that like I'm making today, and being like, oh, I remember when I still had both legs, and I made that. I made that system, I did, back when computers still ran on electricity. Because they'll probably run on Pylon farts by then or something. I don't know. Anyway, I'm waffling. I'm going to take a break. It's probably the most boring thing to stream ever, but sometimes streaming just helps me. It helps me focus, because it's like being at work or whatever, you know what I mean? Or putting your shoes on. I'm like that as well. I learned this years ago, right? I don't normally wear slippers or anything. And if I'm around the house, I just like, I wear socks and that's it. But like, I noticed that like, I feel lazier if I'm just wearing socks. I know it's weird, but like, I relax, like I find it harder to focus if I'm just wearing socks. And like, I noticed like years and years and years ago that like if I leave my shoes on and I don't take them off, and I start doing like hobbies or work or whatever, that I'm just so much more productive. And I'm like, oh wait, it's probably because like, you know, my brain's like, oh, you're at work now or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's business now. You get your shoes on. I don't know. It's something weird. So like now, whenever I work, I put my shoes on. So, but it helps. It helps me like, it helps me feel like, okay, it's work time now. We've got our shoes on. And streaming, I think, does something similar where it's like, okay, the stream's on now. It's time to get into it. You know what I mean? We've got to focus, get this done. Now I'm quite focused anyway without it, but it seems to add an extra layer somehow. So I think it helps, and I think it's cool to stream anyway, because I don't know, maybe somebody can get something out of it. Even I've looked back at like there were times where like I think I accidentally deleted, when was it? It was like Hungry Pieman or something recently, and I accidentally deleted the live version of my project, and because I'd loaded it. Now you should never do this, but this isn't the first time I've made this mistake. So like something went wrong and I backed it up, and then I had to restore from backup. So I loaded the backup version in Unity and I worked on it all day long. And then when I was tidying up and doing housekeeping, I deleted the backup thinking it was an old backup. Oh, I want the new version, you know what I mean? I want all that code that I just did today, so I don't need this backup anymore, and we'll make a new backup. And then when I loaded the project, and I'd emptied my recycle bin as well, which I always do immediately, which you shouldn't ever do. I'm such a pleb. So yeah, I managed to delete a whole day's worth of work on like Hungry Pieman or something. And yeah, I'd been working on the backup all along because I had to restore from backup. But yeah, don't ever do that. Only ever load the live file. If you have to restore from backup, do it in File Manager. And then, because it's too easy to forget that the backup is now the live version, you know what I mean? You should never let yourself get in that state. And you just get into a habit of like, okay, yeah, I need to back this up. So you delete the old backup and you restore the new one. And also, I'm getting better with that. I'm trying to keep at least 2 active backups just in case I do make a mistake like that. But yeah, anyway, long story short, I lost all of the work because I deleted the live version, and it was like Hungry Pieman, I think. And I was gutted because I did some really good work that day, but then I thought, wait a minute, I was literally just streaming it. Like, all I need is that code. If I just watch my own stream back and pause the code, because I didn't want to work it all out again, I'd already done that part. I can copy the code that I wrote earlier and just add it to what's missing now. And so I did that, and you know, it's getting back to where I was cost me like 20 minutes instead of, you know, another 6 hours. So it was helpful, you know. Actually, me streaming this actually helped me out, because an idiot that I am, deleted the live version. But then I thought, well, wait, I can just literally see my own code because I streamed it, and I'll just copy it. So I got it back that way. So yeah, it cost me 20 minutes instead of like another day. So that was good. So yeah, I'm under no illusion, you know, that I'm going to be the next freaking Pirate Software or whatever, and people are all gonna show up and watch me code all day and be like, "Oh, this is so entertaining," and that's probably the most boring thing ever. But it helps me focus, and it's helped me restore code when I've made mistakes, and maybe somebody out there can get something out of it at some point. Who knows? So just trick on. Business as usual. Alright, I will leave it there and stop watching.